Nancy Mace, a Republican congresswoman from South Carolina, an alleged moderate, repeatedly and publicly embarrassed herself in a series of viral moments, all from one day. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so if you follow the Pondering Politics channel, and I hope that you do, what you will know is Nancy Mace is somebody I pick on quite a bit, along with like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, George Santos, Donald Trump, etc. and so forth. But one of the things that separates somebody like Nancy Mace from the other people that I mentioned is that she's really, really good at somehow tricking people and news networks that she's just a moderate, affable, reasonable Republican. She's not like those deranged Trump cultist or whatever. She'll criticize members of her own party. She'll drop an F-bomb. She'll buddy up with some Democrats. But when you scrutinize her votes and you scrutinize her actions, she's as deranged as any of them. So we're going to play a series of clips here, all from one day, in which she embarrasses herself and in so doing reveals the ignorance and depravity of the GOP.
I'm wearing the scarlet letter after the week that I just had last week, being a woman up here and being demonized for my vote and for my voice. I'm here to let the rest of the world know and the country know I'm on the side of the people. I'm not on the side of the establishment, and I'm going to do the right thing every single time, no matter the consequences, because I don't answer to anybody in D.C. I don't answer to anyone in Washington. I only answer to the people.
Yeah, so what this is in reference to, or rather what the context is, this was in the aftermath of a 2-day closed session in which House Democrats were House Republicans were supposedly trying to get their act together and identify a new nominee for the speakership. So she comes out of this closed door meeting with a giant letter A on her shirt, and it's a reference to the Nathaniel Hawthorne classic novel, The Scarlet Letter. Except the A stands for adultery, not anti-establishment, right? So if you read the novel, and it's a dry read, but I had to read it in rural Kentucky in public school as part of my education. Hester Prynne is the protagonist of the novel. She was married, if I remember correctly, but her husband was presumed dead, lost at sea. She got pregnant. The town found out, and that's basically the premise of the book. Again, it's a classic novel set in 17th century North America, puritanical North America. It's a classic, but I didn't enjoy it very much. She has presumably not read it because, again, the A stands for adultery, not anti-establishment. So as people have commented on Twitter, perhaps the GOP should focus more on reading books than banning or burning them. But here's another clip, and actually it's kind of a context. It's like a table setter for the next two clips involving Nancy Mace. So this concerns Jim Jordan and Nancy Mace's endorsement of Jim Jordan for the speakership. This clip provides a context to an ongoing scandal surrounding Jim Jordan.
Here in Ohio, 4 former Ohio State wrestlers are speaking out. They say Jordan has no business becoming the next Speaker of the House.
Former Buckeyes say Jordan failed to protect them from a sexual predator when he was the team's assistant coach back in the 80s and 90s. The sexual predator that they are talking about is Dr. Richard Strauss. Right now, more than 230 men are suing the university, saying Strauss abused them over more than 2 decades. Well, addressing Jordan's potential speakership, former wrestler Mike Schick says, quote, "Do you really want a guy in that job who chose to not stand up for his guys? Is that the kind of character trait you want for a House Speaker?" In the past, Jordan has repeatedly said he knew nothing about the abuse. That claim has been met with anger by some former wrestlers. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court allowed the lawsuit against the university to continue. The university has since apologized to the victims, reaching more than $60 million in settlements with nearly 300 people.
So it sounds like a relatively credible case. Now, again, Jordan's denied all the allegations or whatever, but the context for this is Nancy Mace, who, champions women's rights and the protection of women and the uplifting of women, even though, again, she votes against the reproductive rights every single time without fail, while also simultaneously complaining about how extreme her party has become on abortion rights, thus illustrating that no matter what she says, she's clearly not a moderate, because when push comes to shove in her vote, which matters much more than her words, she votes with extremists. But all that aside, she said she would support Jim Jordan anyway, and people were like, well, he's been credibly accused of covering up for the sexual abuse scandal, and she played ignorant. She's like, oh, I don't know anything about that, and then tried to pivot. So then a few days later, this exchange happened the same day that the first clip that we played happened, but basically a follow-up question with Jake Tapper on CNN.
Who else will it be? And I think there's some other names being tossed around, but my vote will go to him, at least on the first round on the floor.
You were asked about the charges and the allegations, I should say, being made about Congressman Jordan when he was an assistant wrestling coach, I believe, at Ohio State University. This was Sunday, and you said you didn't know anything about it. I assume you've read up on it.
I have since learned a little bit more. And again, I mean, these were, I guess, adults. This is something that should have been adjudicated in a court of law. I don't know that it has been. And again, we can't make decisions based on rumors. We should make them based on facts. I do want to move our country forward. I want a leader that we can trust and who's going to work hard for the American people and can bring, even in some cases, both sides together on different issues.
Yeah.
So what's interesting there is, again, it's just a complete non-answer. Here's the thing. Your respect for due process or, your desire to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, whatever. The problem is, even if we go with that, right, which, by the way, you're not violating Jim Jordan's due process by just simply refusing to endorse him for the speakership. He has no legal right to be Speaker of the House. So it's just the way that she tries to pivot this. But she's also inconsistent. She's like, listen, we shouldn't be making decisions based on unsubstantiated rumors or just rumors. Except that's exactly what she's doing with respect to trying to impeach President Biden. As we discussed in previous videos, she's openly said that President Biden is a traitor. He committed treason by accepting bribes from a foreign energy company, Burisma, bribes for which she has no evidence. And when asked about it, okay, what's the evidence? Where are the transactions? She says, well, we don't have them. Okay, well, what policy did Joe Biden, supposedly change for the benefit of these bribes or whatever? Well, we don't know. So you have no evidence of him receiving a bribe, and you have no evidence of him changing policy, which is the other part of the bribe. And yet she's content to not only support an impeachment inquiry against him, but she apparently is interested in impeaching him wholesale. So when it comes to Democrats, she's more than willing to not only act on a rumor, she's willing to go all the way, to go so far as to try to impeach the sitting president. But when it comes to her guy, a Republican, well, this should have been adjudicated in a court of law. It's very interesting. The last clip, I should have had it teed up. The last clip that I want to play is, okay, brace yourselves for this one. Even Jake Tapper is like, come on, brace yourselves.
It's if it goes to a third round, fourth round, fifth round. I've heard Congressman Patrick McHenry's name out there. I've heard Tom Cole or Tom Emmer. Who are some of the other possible individuals who you think maybe could get to 217?
Well, I think Jim Jordan is not out of the mix. I've talked to a lot of people who still support him. I've actually talked to Democrats who trust him at his word. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Jim Jordan?
Yes, I've talked to Democrats over the last week on who do they trust, even though they wouldn't agree with him on many issues. He is someone.
The Jim Jordan from Ohio?
Oh, yes, the Jim Jordan from Ohio.
Democrats in Congress?
Yes, they can work with him, and those that
Name
I've
one
talked to.
Democrat from Congress that trusts Jim Jordan.
Name people off the record. They trust him more than they trust the former speaker.
All right, that was obviously a lie. That is cap, as my nieces and nephews would say. That there's more cap there than a cap factory or a pen factory, which has caps. I don't know, but that was clearly a blatant lie. But this is the level at which Nancy Mace operates. Again, she's really good. At the end of this interview, believe it or not, Jake Tapper thanks her and says, always great to talk to you. Again, she has this way of tricking people into thinking she's not what she actually is. But when it comes to her votes, when it comes to her actions, when it comes to her endorsements, she's as deranged as any rank and file MAGA cultist. Do not be fooled. Do not play into this. Reject the lie that Nancy Mace is so skilled at peddling. There are, as AOC said a few weeks ago, there is no such thing as a moderate Republican in Congress.